with a cold, nobody gets sick. That's because it's very highly unlikely for a person to catch a cold from touching you or being near you. You know, if a person coughs in your mouth or it gets in your bloodstream somehow, there's a chance, but that's still a slim chance. The only way you really gonna be able to transfer that cold is to a person in your household, probably your children. Plain and simple. Why? Because they have the same type genes, same type of DNA as you. Not your girlfriend, more so your kids. They have to be within your family, in that bloodline. Then it's more likely for you to infect them because viruses attach differently to everybody else. They are unique to that host cell, that host body. But if you have a similar body, like a family member or a child, then it's more likely that it will attach to that person. Routes of transmission for COVID-19. Understand what I just read about rhinovirus. COVID-19 is transmitted via droplets and fomites or fomites, as I just read about rhinovirus. During close, unprotected contact between an infector and infectee. Airborne spread has not been reported for COVID-19 and is not believed to be a major driver of transmission based on available evidence. So you got people running around with this mask. For what? However, it can be envisioned if certain aerosol generating procedures are conducted in health facilities. Fecal shedding has been demonstrated from some patients, and visible virus has been identified in a limited number of cases reported. However, the fecal oral route does not appear to be a driver of COVID-19 transmission. Its role and significance for COVID-19 remains to be determined. Viral shedding is discussed in the technical findings. Then it says down here, household transmission. In China, human-to-human transmission of COVID-19 virus is largely occurring in families, as I just said before. The joint mission received detailed information from the investigation of clusters and some household transmission studies, which are ongoing in a number of provinces, among 344 clusters involving 1,308 cases out of a total 1,836 cases reported. In Guangdong province and Sichuan province, most clusters, 78 to 85%, have occurred in families. Household transmission studies are currently underway, but preliminary studies ongoing in Guangdong estimate the secondary attack rate in household ranges from 3 to 10%. So now we're going to get to 5G in a second. I know a lot of people waiting on that, but understand, as I've just been showing you guys, this is the same thing. It's the same thing as the common cold that's happening, but it's a lot more to it, as I will get into in a second to make this more understandable. So you have the same symptoms, one, COVID-19, same symptom as human rhinovirus and human coronavirus, same thing. You have the same forms of treatment. You have the same forms of testing, same type of results. It's the same thing. Remember, more people are recovering than dying, just like every year we have with the common cold. This started the same time the common cold starts. Cold and flu season, same time. So all you have to do is put this together, but you got to understand why all this stuff is going on, as we'll get into. It's the same stuff. Again, you cannot catch a virus. You can't catch it. If somebody in your family that's blood is sick, stay away from them because you could probably catch it. There's still a slim chance, but it's a possibility that you can catch it. But a regular person that's out on the street, a person that you have no blood tied to, there's no way you should be catching any viruses from them. The reason why people are getting sick, because of course that question still remains, how is all these people getting sick? I'm about to get into now. So now this is where it gets weird. And I say that in a lot of videos. This is where it gets weird. And this is where you have to really remember a lot of stuff that we have been seeing over the decades, a lot of stuff that a lot of people are familiar with. So again, question would be, how are these people getting sick? If we're talking about human rhinovirus, human coronavirus happening within a person, how are they causing this to happen? And if you understand, how this stuff is working, it's easy. They have a way to basically force your body to self-detoxify. They do it every year. This is how the common cold begins. So it's up to you, once we get into this in a second, to believe this or not. But they are basically triggering your body to self-detoxify. How are they doing this? You guessed it, chemtrails. Now, before you say I'm crazy, start running out the room, let me finish, because if you watch, I always prove my points. It's chemtrails. They have been spraying us with chemtrails for decades. And you have to understand, if you read anything about how the body, as I said, how it detoxifies, it's when aerosols, so if you're spraying a lot of chemicals in your house, you're going to get sick eventually over time from all those chemicals that have aluminums and a lot of metals in it. Eventually, you'll get sick from that and your body will detoxify all those metals and so on and so forth. So basically what they do, and they do this all the time, is they basically spray chemtrails. Now, a lot of people think this is conspiracy theory and all crazy stuff, but I'm gonna prove you wrong in a second. Because you gotta understand, a lot of independent researchers and doctors, scientists have been doing studies on this for years. So it says here, this is Dr. Horowitz. And I'm basically criticizing him here, but his point, it says, the immune dysfunction allows people, because he's saying that this causes immune dysfunction, these chemtrails. The immune dysfunction allows people to become susceptible to opportunistic infections, such as the mycoplasma and other opportunistic infections. He claims to have investigated the content of jet plane contrails after they were sprayed over his home in northern Idaho. The Center for Disease Control Toxicology confirmed they contain an amount of ethylene dibromide in jet fuel, he said. Dr. Horowitz said ethylene dibromide was a chemical carcinogen that was removed from unleaded petrol for health reasons, but he believes that it is purposefully added to the jet fuel of high-altitude military aircrafts to make the general population sick. It is also being added to commercial aircrafts. Now let's come here real quick. This is from the investigation. It says, since 1998, U.S. Air Force tanker planes have been intensively spraying broad white plumes over virtually every major city and rural area in the United States and Canada. Chemtrail spray planes have also been sighted over England, Europe, Australia, Mexico, Bahamas, Brazil, Croatia, and Puerto Rico. Now I'm going to go down here. It says, since spraying intensified in 1998, the Center for Disease Control recorded 59 weeks of epidemic fatalities from pneumonia, that's a key word right here, pneumonia and influenza-like illness. The CDC now says many of these deaths could be caused by some unknown pathogen. Now remember, this is old. This is long before COVID-19. That's how long had this spraying been occurring. Cloud books confirm that tests have been conducted since the 1960s. Old photographs show sporadic CTs dating to the early 1970s, with the activity steadily increasing throughout the 1980s. Since 1998, citizens throughout the world have documented spray patterns on a nearly daily basis, with an average of one clear day per week. We have all become accustomed to these changes, and they've been introduced bit by bit and have presumed them to be normal. Younger generations have never seen normal weather and clouds. Think about that. If they've been spraying us every day except for one day a week, we've been having, different weather, for decades. Why should we be so concerned about chemtrails? It says a flu-like epidemic is on the rise. It's already here, which the Center for Disease Control says may be due to some unknown pathogen. From their May 6, 2000 influenza summary update, 11 out of every 100 newly dead people have died from this influenza-like illness. But 99% of sick patients have tested negative for the flu. And we know what happens when they test negative for the flu. What? They give them that swab to see if it's coronavirus. Here goes some of the symptoms. And the main one I want to really get to here is just allergies, mucus, swollen, burning eyes. But the main one is pneumonia, upper respiratory mycoplasma infections. But pneumonia is the main one. Now, as I said, people are always going to believe what they want to believe. People are going to believe the news before they believe their own eyes in a lot of cases. And I know chemtrails has been this whole big conspiracy theorist thing. A lot of people think it's crazy. But guess what? They have already admitted to chemtrails. They have already admitted it. It's already on record that this government, the American government, is using chemtrails and have been using it for years. Now, it says here, and this is official documentation from Scientific Agriculture. This is all legit. It's the abstract. It says, weather engineering scientists develop a new chemtrail technology applied by jets in the stratosphere for decreasing the global warming. And this is what they said it's for. We're doing chemtrails because we're trying to decrease global warming. It is based on building synthetic chemical clouds and aluminum oxide as Witchcraft particles, and Witchcraft actually patented this whole process. Witchcraft particles to reflect the heat coming from the sun back in the upper atmosphere, and thus cooling the air on Earth. The applied aerosol mixture contains also nanoparticles of barium monoxide, which react with CO2 when reaching the troposphere, turning into barium carbonate and bicarbonate, leading to minimalization of its content in the atmosphere on the long run. In 2000, listen here, it says, in 2000, the UN approved the first global weather engineering project in the history of mankind to combat the global warming by chemtrail technology for the period from 2000 to 2050, with a budget of US $50 billion a year, financed and completely managed by USA alone. Since the application took place on the global level, climatologists, biologists, agronomists, and medical institutions around the globe recorded and explained undesirable side effects of this technology with severe impact on the weather, natural resources, of flora and fauna, as well as on human health. These effects could be summarized in the following. Creation of completely new wind directions by induced air depression, dehydration of certain ecosystems through the aluminum oxide, charging giant air electric fields leading to more lightning and induced wildfires, which we have been seeing that a lot, and dehydrated forests and rangeland, increasing frequency and empowering of natural disasters by seeding air with precipitation nuclei causing floods, cooling upper air layers over warm water, causing hurricanes, tornadoes, and building heavy snow and hail, decreasing air visibility due to suspended chemtrail particles in the air, causing health problems with allergic symptoms to chemicals and components of its aerosol, creation of extreme killer heat waves while reflecting heat back to Earth by aluminum oxide, increasing human mortality in proportion to decreased air visibility, increasing risks with calcification disease caused by the stratospheric nanobacteria carried down to Earth on the chemtrail particles. And it says down here, it gives you the patent number. Now, as I said before, the Witchcraft particles, he patented this whole thing. Here's the US patent number right here. When you look it up, you find it. And you also see the last patent holder was Raytheon. And we know Raytheon has many US defense contracts. This is all legit right here. So now, let's go here. It says here, in 2000, the USA called for an international gathering for climatologists under the umbrella of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And here it is right here. You guys probably know about this already. They come together all the time to present the positive results gained from 1991 to 2000 in decreasing the air temperature over the entire USA by geoengineering through seeding and stratospheric by Witchcraft chemical particles. According to the patent of Sang and Chai, the 50 years shield protection of Edward Teller was presented and proposed as an effective global solution for the global warming phenomenon, and that the US $50 billion cost of the project are totally sponsored by the USA, as I read before. The project included the international flight companies through contracts to provide the jets with the tanks and spraying system of the chemtrails. The satellite images will help the Project Control Center located in the USA Ministry of Defense. Now here's talking about dehydration and ecosystem. The spray aluminum oxide absorbs the air humidity in a chemical reaction, turning into aluminum hydroxide. After a few months of continuous application, a relative humidity in the ecosystem decreased significantly. At some days of summer in Egypt, it decreased to only 8 to 12%. Dehydration and lightning resulted by chemtrails induced wildfires destroying forests, forages, and fields, crops, as happened in Australia in 2008 and also just happened in Australia in 2019. And the USA Rosenweig reported losses in agriculture due to the 2008 summer drought and wildfires by 56 billion. That's more than the total cost of the freaking entire project. Hearn then described and discussed the adverse consequences of the chemtrails on agriculture. It says health problems due to inhalation of the aluminum oxide that turn into hydroxide on the humid binding tissues in eyes, nose, throat, and chest. Irritation takes place in form of allergic reactions to large numbers of people, especially infants and aged persons. Other diseases are reported in relation to these chemicals of the sprayed chemtrails, namely pneumonia. It goes on to list more here. It says all symptoms were found associated with high levels of aluminum and barium in the bodies of the patients. It says increasing the rates of human mortality. A relationship was found by American scientists between air visibility and human mortality rates that were published by the American Heart Association. Mortality increased mostly among aged persons and infants by 25% when the horizontal air visibility decreased to 2.8 miles. And this is, of course, from them messing with the weather. So now to break that down, they're basically saying that they have been using chemtrails to basically stop global warming. Now, we've been hearing about global warming for a long time. When have you seen on the news them come out and admit that we are using chemtrails, but then they go behind closed doors and they have these huge conferences with people from all over the world to discuss chemtrails and what they're doing. But when we say something about chemtrails, to look at us like we're crazy. A lot of people have called people crazy, have called people, psychos for talking about chemtrails, something that we have all seen. We can all admit, we looked up and we seen these. A lot of people was like, what the hell? You had celebrities coming out talking about this stuff. You had so many people talking about chemtrails because it's something that just bothers people, that they spraying stuff over us. And people got kids. People worried about what's happening and what's going on with these chemtrails and how are they necessary. So you have contrails, you have chemtrails. Contrails are short, chemtrails are long, and we see this all the time with the contrails, but the chemtrails are, of course, the most noticeable. So you have these aluminums and particles coming down, and this is what's making people sick. So to answer the whole question of how is it that all these people are getting sick, this is how. This is how. They have been spraying these chemtrails to build up in our body. And understand, if you choose to believe it or not, they have been doing this for decades. So I'm telling you that when we get the cold and flu season, when we're getting sick, it's these pharmaceutical companies that's paying off and cashing in billions of dollars, talking trillions even a year off of pharmaceuticals because of the common cold. And there is no cure for the common cold, and now you understand why, because the common cold happens within you. How are you going to cure something that's a natural occurrence within the body? Now, spraying these chemtrails, causing all these metals and all this aluminum to come down and get into your system, is going to cause you to detoxify. And they got it, mapped out to where at this certain time of year, people are detoxifying more. Also, they can get the numbers down. They can get rid of old people. A lot of old people, can get rid of people with sicknesses. So people have respiratory infections and that are old are going to be catching these influenzas, catching pneumonia, and dying from this by the millions. This is yearly. This is what they're doing. So all they did for right now, during this time that we're in, these last few months, they're normal, dropping chemtrails on us. But only this time, they upped the dosage.
Doesn't that look a lot like Donald Trump? And doesn't that look a lot like an airplane with a whole bunch of tanks inside of it where the seating used to be? It's like they pulled a bunch of seats out and put a bunch of tanks in there for stratosphere aerosol injections.